It's Sunday, the 6th of December. We're coming at you quicker than a Jack Santini managerial reign. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, no one can stop.
Welcome to the podcast, guys, ladies and gents. Welcome along. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to e-Spurs and our podcast that we present every week to you guys out there listening, wherever you are around the globe. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with us about anything you hear on tonight's show, it's all about you guys and what you think. So let us know at e_Spurs on Twitter, or if you prefer Facebook, it's e-Spurs page, all one word on there. We've also got Google Plus, YouTube, Pinterest. We're on all of them. So look at our website, check it out, and get in touch. Tonight on the show, we'll be looking back at the West Brom game at the weekend. Of course, the 1-1 draw there. We'll be seeing what the guys think about the draw up at the Hawthorns. We'll also be previewing Monaco and Newcastle to come, and talking about anything else, everything and anything THFC that's happened during the last 7 days. So there you are. That's what we're talking about. Let's introduce tonight's group for you. They are, of course, the e-Spurs team. It's Jason, John and Ricky. How you doing, fellas?
Very well, thank you.
All good, mate.
Very well, thank you.
Great stuff. Hope you're still with us and not been blown away by the storm yesterday. Of course, a storm that affected the game up at the Hawthorns, and 1-1 draw. We talked about the game on last week's show. We said it's going to be a tough game. Despite our form going into the game, it's always going to be tough up there with the Tony Pulis managed side. Jason, coming to you first of all, mate. What did you make of the draw up there? Good point for you?
Yeah, our hurricane didn't blow in the hurricane, did it?
No, exactly.
Unfortunately. No, it was a strange game because for the first thing I was worried about was make sure we start at the right tempo and that. And for the first 20 minutes, we looked like we were right on it. Got the goal where Dele Alli nutmegged yet another player. And everything was really well, and you thought, yep, this is what we wanted to see. But then, credit to West Brom, they then got into our faces, didn't they? Did all the things you expect a Tony Pulis side to do, and they totally turned it round. And so from looking like we were going to get the 3, in the end, we probably were happy to take the point. But ultimately, it's 2 points dropped, unfortunately. But the one thing I wish we'd have been able to do from the game was the West Brom goal. I'd love us to score a goal like that. Ping it to the byline and whip a ball to the far post. Good football that was. Very good football.
Yeah, it's we spoke, Jace, last week on the show about these draws that we seem to be accumulating now, and what could have been if we turned these draws into points. What do you put it down to? Why are we drawing so many games at the moment?
Difficult to know, isn't it? There's times when, certainly for some of those games, teams have got people behind the ball, and I think that's where we tend to struggle once teams do get men behind the ball. We haven't got anyone that really goes past a defender. We try and angle our passes through the defensive lines, and once Tony Pulis type sides block those lines of passing out, we end up just going through the middle, and it becomes really samey. I think, certainly in January's window, one of the things I'd like us to do is to try and find someone that can come on 20 minutes to go and take a man on one-on-one and go past him.
I was thinking yesterday watching the game, it's almost as if we try to overplay, isn't it? When we get close to the opponent's box, we almost think about it too much and run out of ideas. And John, yesterday for me, loved the guy to bits, but Harry Kane was completely anonymous yesterday, wasn't he?
He was. I think the player I had the biggest problem with yesterday was Eriksen, just because he's the one we looked to unlock the door, and he just didn't do it. He weren't really on it yesterday. I don't think even Diff could have been better as well. And I think Eriksen's performance a lot of the time does have a direct effect on Harry Kane, to be honest. Yeah,
he relies on that supply, doesn't he? He's one of those players that he's always looking for that pass to run through the opponent's defence. And at the moment as well, Ricky, I noticed yesterday we certainly seemed to be playing the long ball quite a lot. Was that, do you think, down to the weather conditions? We mentioned that made it tricky yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's a major issue for us, Andy. We just never seem to get settled. I know we went 1 up, but even at 1-0, I just didn't feel we were that secure in the game itself. And West Brom, I think you've got to give credit to the opposition. They really did frustrate us. And, Tony Pulis, you've got to sometimes give credit where it's due. he done a number on us. And what we are finding now is that it's becoming very, very hard for Spurs to break teams down, because we just don't simply have a possible game changer to come off the bench when the game is late on. And, that's all evident, as we said, at the end of the January window, when we know we should have got a second striker and didn't buy one.
Yeah, it was interesting yesterday. There was a certain gentleman sitting on the bench, wasn't there, sort of looking very thoughtful whenever the camera panned round to him, Mr. Berahino. Jason, with the game yesterday, there was another gentleman that caught my attention. That James McLean's a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, we were just mentioning it before we came on air. I mean, I don't understand how a referee could miss such a thing when it's like 5 yards in front of him, and the worry was he was going to wave play on.
It was a red
He
card.
didn't even see it as a foul.
Yeah.
And as soon as you see it, you think that he's in big trouble there. And you didn't kind of need replays to know what had happened, did you? But a Premier League referee, 5 yards away with no one in front of him, waves play on at first, and I thought, well, it baffles you when things happen like that.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. I know referees are only human, we're not going to ever be at the stage where we have complete consistency, but you expect a certain degree of consistency, don't you? And I mean, there's no way yesterday that you're telling me one of those three officials didn't see the how bad that tackle was yesterday. Absolutely awful. And, and then he goes down, doesn't he? 5 minutes to go, and you just know that he's letting the time tick down. And fair play to them, as Ricky said, they did a number on us. They got their point. But I certainly would never ever want Spurs to play in that manner or use those tactics. But they do what they've got to do, I guess, and it worked. John, with regards to yesterday, our defence also, another point that I jotted down this morning was that, I mean, I'm sure the weather had a big part to play in it, but it was almost as if, I mean, we saw some Sunday League defending yesterday, didn't we? I mean, headers that they were jumping a couple of seconds after the ball, and it worried me at times that the lack of understanding between our defence and Lloris.
Well, I think the conditions probably did play a part in that, but the one incident that really worried me that we haven't really seen so far this season at all was when Rondon absolutely done Vertonghen.
Yeah.
There was a ball over the top. He out-muscled him, got to move the ball away from him, and we were lucky. I think it was 0-0 at that point. We were lucky he didn't score. There was a lot of empty seats in the home ends. The away end was sold out, as you would expect. Amazing travelling fans. And I think the problem we're finding now is that teams are playing in a way which they would play at White Hart Lane usually, where they had Evans in midfield yesterday, so they're trying to cancel us out. And they're playing for a point, but that is starting to happen in away games for us now, which is probably a sign of how good we've become, but also from a West fan's point of view, no wonder they don't want to be going.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't buy a season ticket to watch that football, would you? It's not the most attractive of games, and as you say, maybe it is the biggest compliment that a team can pay to us is that we're playing that style of football. In terms of other performances, Ricky, there was a few that in terms of the best players for Spurs on the park yesterday. I thought Rose had a good game. Lloris pulled out that worldie, didn't he? That point blank save at 1-1. And there were a few other players that stood out for Spurs yesterday. What did you make? Dele Alli got the goal. What did you make of Dele Alli's all-round performance?
I mean, that goal was a super finish, and to be fair, I mean, that was not a finish of someone of League One standards. That just shows you how much he's thrown in his short time at Spurs. But just to touch base on your point on the defence yesterday, I really did feel that Alderweireld really covered for Vertonghen yesterday. Yeah. I thought Alderweireld stood out yesterday really, really well. And often, I think Vertonghen, for the first time this season, looked really, really uncomfortable against Rondon. And many of the times you saw Alderweireld actually come over and covered Vertonghen, and that's a sign of a good partnership where one is struggling, the other comes over, helps out his centre-back partner. But at the same time, that was a worry. But then you look at it and think, well, we still only conceded one goal, and that was probably the first time this season we actually thought fairly suspect, and we just conceded the one goal. But I have to say on the other side, as much as Walker has improved this season, I really felt that he let us down on the goal. It was his man that escaped him at the back post, and I know we can't always ask for our defenders to be perfection every game, but for me, Walker really has to cut that out of his game, because he's lucky that he's got the pace in certain aspects that lets him out of trouble. But defending your man, when it's your man, you have to be responsible. And we let him back into the game, And we have to say from that, the 1-1, I don't think we ever really looked likely that we were going to win the game. And that was a concern.
He had another brain fart. I coined that phrase last week. I'm using it again. He had another brain fart. He didn't have a quick glance over his shoulder. Didn't realise McLean was there till it was too late, did he?
No, and we've seen that all too often, haven't we, mate? With Kyle Walker, he puts in a fantastic performance. We come on here and praise him to the high hill, and then he goes and has a clanger, doesn't he, in the next game?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it always seems to be him as well. I can't think of any other player who's made a mistake which has led directly to a goal. But that's, I think, the third one for Walker now. You had Man United away, West Ham at home, and now yesterday as well.
Just have to say, lads, just to touch on it, Danny Rose, that phenomenal tackle that he made second half. I mean, that tackle there, that is a match-saving tackle. I know we only got a point out of it, but that tackle there, that is the sign of a player with such improvement. And, he rightfully deserves his place back in the side against Ben Davies. I think many called when Davies was left out for Rhodes. I think many said that Davies was unlucky his place. But for me personally, I still see Rose as our best Premier League left back.
And it was one of those tackles he had to get spot on, didn't he? He missed the tackle the blokes through. He gets it slightly wrong. It's a red card. It was, God, as you say, match-saving tackle that was.
He's probably the best. I reckon he's our best tackler on the ground in the whole squad.
Yeah.
Because he's done it so many times. And I can't think of one where he's mucked it up, to be honest.
I think he's brilliant. The guy has come on leaps and bounds. And you mentioned there the competition. I mean, Jace, he must be close, surely, to getting into the England squad now.
My one worry with him would be, and particularly at international level, may be that he sometimes commits into a tackle when he probably needs to stand on his feet.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Hodgson and that do worry about him. Sometimes I think he's quite a temperamental boy, and you think, oh, is he a red card waiting to happen at times? And maybe that's the one part of his game that people at the very highest level would look at and think, not quite sure about. But, his commitment to the cause, and he goes in for some challenges, doesn't he? He goes in for some 40, 60s, 30, 70 type tackles at times.
Yeah.
You have to wince a couple of times and think, oh, I hope he gets this one right. But, no, he's having an excellent season for us for sure.
Yeah, certainly is. We did, as I say, just sort of in summary yesterday, we just need to turn these draws into wins, don't we? And then we can really start to think ambitiously. I know last week we tongue-in-cheek spoke about Spurs for the title, but top four this season would be fantastic, I think. And when you look, guys, at the results from the weekend, and especially today, Liverpool going up to Newcastle and losing, it then makes you maybe put it into a bit of perspective, doesn't it, Ricky? And then maybe makes you think, well, maybe it's not such a bad point after all.
I think we have to say, Andy, that this weekend we've been let off the hook, if I can use that kind of phrase, because you think about it, City, Chelsea, United, Liverpool, none of them have gained points in this weekend. We've gained points, we've gained a point on City, we've gained a point over Chelsea, we've gained a point over Liverpool. Arsenal, you would have expected them to beat Sunderland. So in all, it could have been a much worse weekend in terms of results. And I think this is the case that from our end, we just have to focus on our job, because I think over the years that's been Tottenham's concern. We look too much at other teams and don't focus on ourselves. If we continue to look at ourselves, and I still go by the opinion of yesterday, if you can't win the game, then don't lose it. The West Bromwich Albion, that was never going to be an easy fixture for us. They've just turned over Arsenal. Before that, they came from behind to get a point at West Ham. So they're not a bad side, and Pulis is a good coach, and he would have drilled them all week in terms of how to, play against Spurs. He would have known that we would have been in their faces. So for me, as disappointing it is to drop the 2 points around us, we've been fairly lucky in terms of the other teams, but no excuses next week. We need to win.
Yeah,
and Leicester have turned out to be the real winners of the weekend, haven't they? They've made up ground. They've advanced ground on everyone around them. So Leicester have come out the weekend of the best of the lot.
Yeah, you can just almost see the script now, can't you, Jason? Spurs best chance at top four in a few years, and then up springs Leicester and causes a few problems in the Spurs.
It's amazing. We actually need Chelsea to go there and do a job on them next week.
Who'd have thought we'd be saying that?
Who'd have thought we'd be saying that? Yeah.
It's shocking, isn't it? When you just coming off Spurs for a moment, Leicester have done a great job, but without Jamie Vardy, lads, can you see them putting in a consistent level of performance for the rest of the season if they was to maybe lose Jamie Vardy?
Well, I think they've got Mahrez and Drinkwater have also been two key men for Leicester. And to be fair, a lot of them are just buying into the team aspect there. Even before Ranieri took over, back to even Nigel Pearson, their run towards the end of the season was phenomenal, and they just seem to have carried that on. I think the key for them is they've not changed too much in terms of the coaching structure there. I mean, Ranieri's come in, but he's actually kept the structure of the coaching staff the same, hasn't changed much. The players are buying into the philosophy, but I do honestly believe that at some point they will have a decline, because with Leicester, it's a team of 12 to 13 players they've got in the squad. With Spurs, we are a much bigger squad. Yes, we haven't got a second striker, but we have got players that can come in and do a job. And just like Southampton last season, I mean, I still anticipate Leicester to fall away. But who knows?
Be interesting to see. And I mean, you've got Liverpool in there who are hot and cold. You've got Manchester United who are getting slated at the moment by their own fans, although they're still in the top four, which is interesting. You've got Man City who are strangely off the boil at the moment. God knows what's happened with them. And then you've got Spurs who, apart from Arsenal aside, Jason, would you say Spurs are the most consistent in there at the moment, apart from the Gooners?
Well, the most consistent in the sense that we've gone now, 14 without a defeat. But, like I said, if you think about it, we've now played 15 games and only won 6. That's only a third. It's just over a third of the games.
Yeah, certainly. I mean,
so, and as we've said, we'd have gladly swapped a couple of those draws, wouldn't we, if we'd have lost at West Brom and lost at Swansea, but picked up, 3 of the wins at home to Chelsea, Liverpool, and Everton or something.
Do you think, John, that these drop points that we're having might force Levy and Pochettino into the January transfer market, maybe more so than they would have been tempted to?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, because I think the two things that we've really needed to progress with and to improve on over the last few years has been the goal difference, which seems to be a running joke amongst Spurs fans, if we've got a plus goal difference. And the other thing was the European hangovers, as they became known. Now, we've got the second best goal difference in the league, and we haven't lost after a European game yet this season. So I think they're two key areas which we have definitely improved on. But I think, as we said last week, it depends how seriously I think Levy considers our top 4 challenge to be. Because we had it a few years ago when we were third and he bought Sahara and Nelson. Now that was the perfect opportunity. And I think we'll probably be better off being 5th or 6th in January the 1st. Because then he might think, actually, he might, if we were 3rd or 4th, they might rest on his laurels like he did do before. So I think if we was a few more points behind, there's probably more chance that he'd put his hand in his pocket in a sort of backwards kind of way.
Yeah, we all just hope, I think, that he doesn't have, as you would say, another brain fart and leave it till the last day of the window and, make us all sweat again.
I think the thing is, lads, also, well, just to touch on the Berahino situation, I think Pulis actually came out and has said, I think Friday, that he's been told under no uncertainty that he has to sell before he can buy any players. Now, Berahino, as we know, has been sat on the bench for God knows how many weeks. He's not going to keep him there if he's not going to play him. So I personally think he wanted to get rid of him, Pulis. I think he actually wanted to get rid of him in August. And obviously with the whole mind games with Levy and Peace, chairman didn't want to sell him. And Pulis at the moment is favouring Rondon. He likes to just play the one up top and have the 5 in the middle. I think, providing we put enough money there and don't mess him around this time in terms of how we're going to pay in instalments or whatever, we will get the player. And Levy this week and Pochettino has come out and stated that he wants a second striker in January. Now, I don't know whether to kind of force Levy's hand, but Pochettino, it's unlike him to have come out and actually said we are looking for someone unless we want to buy them. So fingers crossed that he does stick to his word and we do go and buy a second striker, because look, it's 8 draws. We need to turn these draws into wins. Otherwise, we can forget about Champions League aspirations, because at some point during the season, whether it's now, January, February, we will see other teams be consistent. And we have been one of the most consistent teams up to now, but we have to turn these draws into wins. We have to.
Certainly do. And Jason, I mean, staying on the transfer front, do you think that the war of words, the so-called war of words, if you like, between Jeremy Peace and Daniel Levy might affect our going back in for him in January?
No, because I think the war of words between Jeremy Peace and Tony Pulis were probably even bigger. And that Pulis, the boys are right. I think Pulis wants Berahino gone, and he wants to have that money available for himself, and he wants it as early as possible in January. And you'd hope that since August, Daniel Levy and Peace have been able to pick the phone up to each other or go and buy, one of them's bought dinner for the other one and a bottle of wine or something and said, look, come January, we got to sort this mess out because it looks like the boy wants to go to Tottenham. Tottenham want him and Pulis wants him out. So, I think if we go there and say there's 15 to 18 million up front, you can have the rest in add-ons, and that 18 million quid plus for a bloke that sat on your bench, can't get in your team and your manager wants you to get rid of. That seems a fair enough offer to me, and hopefully they'll do that. But also, I think the other thing that must happen, there's maybe a little bit of criticism of Poch is, with so many of these draws, is that he has to find a different way when our normal game isn't working. I think that's the other thing. We can't just have one plan of press that after 70 minutes we're going nowhere, and think, you've got to have one or two different answers, haven't you? And it is for Poch to find that way, or in January to go and buy a player that can give you a different tactical part of the game.
Well, I noticed yesterday, Jason, you just touched on it there. There were so many occasions us attacking the West Brom box, and there was one player in the box, and you want to pull your hair out at times. You see us being attacked, and they overload our box. With players, not just West Brom. You can reel the teams off pretty much every team we've played against. Whereas although we press, we tend to be quite cautious with getting players into the box at times, and it's so frustrating because then that area just behind just in front of the defence gets packed. The attacking players run out of space. There's no passes on because there's no room to make a pass, and it ends up being intercepted. And I think that's got to change. With if he's going to play one up top, fair enough, that's fine. But as you say, he's got to find a way of getting more players into the box and also making some space between the players and not running down dead alleys. Don't get me wrong, Eric Lamella's had a fantastic season this season. He's done us all proud, but I think yesterday we saw him running down far too many dead alleys, and although he tackled back for the ball well and put his usual shift in, it gets so congested in that central midfield with no wingers. There's no outlet, is there? And that's, I think, the problem you're going to have playing one up top, unless he at home especially decides to sometimes change it around and go with two up top, and we're always going to see that. I just can't see how you're going to change that. We
had a little spell, didn't we, after about an hour where we had the ball. We must have linked 50, 60 passes together,
and
went from side to side about 4 or 5. And it reminded me of a rugby team, where you can't pass forwards, and it goes from one side to the other where the defence is lined up, and nobody could seem to thread anything through at all. And that's the frustration. And that's what I say. Poch must find a different way when we're in that situation.
It's going to be a big test of him as a character, I think. And we mentioned last season on the podcast that in some ways he was pretty naive in terms of some of his tactics and substitutions. And now I think is the big test. Will he be able to develop as a manager tactically? In the Premier League, we know it's hugely important. You're coming up against some master tacticians in there, and some managers that just like to play it plain dirty, as we know Tony Pulis does. And it's going to be a great test and an interesting season, because we're going to see how he adjusts. Just one final mention on the transfer front, lads. I don't know who to come to on this one, but in the papers this morning, it's obviously pinch of salt and all that. Been rumoured that Manchester United considering a summer offer, and I say this completely tongue in cheek, for our Harry Kane. The figure quoted once again was 50 million. By a journalist who I'm guessing was sitting at his desk bored and didn't have anything better to do. And 50 million for Harry Kane. My only concern is that the money might go so high for him that Daniel Levy might consider it. John, is there any figure that you could see Daniel Levy considering for Harry Kane?
No.
Thank God for that.
Absolutely not. I think because of the way the club are going with the stadium and stuff like that. Because of the compulsory purchase order against Archway Steel, a lot of the details of the deal became so public, and the fact that the club had to prove that they had the money there waiting in an account to go ahead with the stadium puts us in a strong position, in as much as we don't need to sell necessarily our best players again. I would imagine, although the bail money was spent straight out on the team, some of the other money we've recouped and have done since and before that would have gone towards the future of the club and the stadium. But I just think where we are now, I think we're one of the only I think there's only 2 teams in the league that are in the black, if I'm right, and we're one of them. And I just think that I really don't think he'll do it again. I mean, you saw what happened after Bale went. It was a big cluster, and it took to recover from it. I think the sale of Harry Kane potentially would be worse. And I think he's learnt his lesson, hopefully.
I think as well, in fairness to Daniel Levy, the high-profile sales that we've made over the past 10 years where he's accused of selling our best player, the likes of, say, Berbatov's deal and the Modric deal and the Bale deal, the key to all of that was that the player was instigating the move. The player wanted to move. And then when the player wants to move and your contract's down to, say, 2 years, Daniel Levy has to say, well, I either take the money and I get the maximum money I can get for him, but if I don't take the money and say to him, right, sorry, I'm rejecting all the bids, but that contract runs down and the player doesn't sign, then everyone turns around in the Sol Campbell way. And we must remember that Daniel Levy always said, I will never allow the Sol Campbell situation to ever happen again. So I think his view is once it gets down to 2 years, I will take the big offer. But for me, Harry Kane's not, certainly shows no signs at the moment of being the one that wants to push or instigate a move, which all the other ones did.
Yeah, Andy, I think what we need to bear in mind as well is that Harry Kane just embraces everything that Spurs are at the moment. A young, energetic side, everybody playing for the shirt. If you're going to sell him, then, you might as well just rip the club's long-term plan up. It just doesn't, which would not make any sense. From a financial point of view, yeah, as a short-term thing, get money in the bank. But from a long-term perspective, that's where you just start losing the support. And I think Levy now has gradually got some respect back for him now that people are seeing Pochettino being able to manage and assemble the squad in a great way and seeing where we are in the league and playing the attractive football, and we're now seeing the players care for the shirt again. I don't think Levy can afford to do that, because if he does sell Kane, which I don't think will happen, and I don't think the player wants to go, then it's going to just cause major uproar. And for once in a long time, fans, players, board, are actually all unified. So it would just be the worst thing to happen to Spurs, but I just don't see it happening.
Mr. Levy, I hope you're listening to that. If
I could just jump in, as we just mentioned the words a couple of times there, playing for the shirt. And I think where Pochettino gets bashed a little bit with all this Plan B stuff, which I think is a bit... I don't think a Plan B exists, really. I think it's just media talk, that phrase. I think his problem last season was the fact that he had players on the bench who he clearly didn't trust and knew that weren't going to be there for long. So what's the point? Whereas we saw players like Harry Winks was on the bench yesterday. Josh Onoma's got a fair amount of game time recently. And I just think if those two especially were a year further on in their development this time last year, they would have been keeping Paulinho and Cabal and players like that off the bench. So I don't really think it's fair to judge him. It's such a gradual build at Tottenham. We can't go out and buy a whole new team. So he has to do it gradually. And I think only in maybe 5, 6, 7 transfer windows will we really see, if his plan has worked. And hopefully by then he will, this whole Plan B stuff will be dropped, because people will see he's got options and he's got players on the bench who he clearly likes. Now, there were games last season where we were letting in a lot of goals, and you think, well, we've got Stambouli on the bench. He's a defensive midfielder, and he weren't bringing him on. And he's clearly, he went in the summer, which shows he clearly didn't want him. He didn't trust him. And I might just hoping that a year or two down the line, he will have a squad full of players that he does trust, and he will throw in if he needs to.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work out myself how Stambouli got that move to PSG, but answers on a post.
Well, he's not playing there either, is it? He's not playing there either. So I think it just comes down to the fact that maybe PSG were after the same kind of player we were after. Obviously, I'm not a fan of. I don't know PSG's transfer strategy or anything, but we were after a player to cover that kind of position. It was getting late into the window. We ended up with Stambouli, and maybe PSG just fell into the same position as we did. And maybe that's why they signed him, and he didn't cost them much, did he?
They probably needed to fill their homegrown quota or something for Champions League football and things. The fact that only Watford looked to be the interesting party for Stambouli perhaps sums up where Stambouli was.
I bet
there you go. Same as Capoue.
Well, yeah. In saying that, Capoue, I think, got man of the match the other day, didn't he, at Watford? But he was never going to make the grade, was he? I don't think at Spurs. That was clear. But
I would imagine that's his first man of the match award in 2.5 years in England. I don't think we're missing much.
No, I'm sure there won't be many tears shed. But you know what, lads? I think that. We've mentioned the Plan B there. John, do you think, just playing devil's advocate for a moment, do you think do you not think, sorry, that there should be a way of changing these draws into wins at the moment? For me, I guess just picking up on Jason's point earlier, I'm still not convinced that Clinton and G and Son are the right players. I think they've still got a lot to prove. It's still very early days, of course, for Son especially, but I just don't know if he's found a way of changing a game when you need a draw to become a win. Would you agree with that, or would you say, as you have done, that it may be a little bit unfair?
I agree, but only because he's still in the early. He's only been at Tottenham 18 months, and I think last time we really had a plan B that showed bared any kind of fruit was when we had Crouchy on the bench, and that was just to bring him on and lump it up to him. I really believe this whole Plan B thing is a myth. Teams play as they play. Take Barcelona; they play the way they play. If they're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go, they haven't got a big lump up front to put on. They play the way they play, and I think we're very much the same way. I can't really think of many managers. I think it's only really Fergie that had done it, but then he had a squad full of world-class players. I think that's the difference, and I think until we're in that position, it will be the way it is. As long as Pochettino really trusts the system he wants to play and the players understand what they've got to do, then I think we'll be all right. And I think that goes for a lot of other teams.
Yesterday with Pochettino, we did try and change the game in terms of bringing Son and NG off the bench, but we know that both of them are neither number nine strikers as a backup option for Kane. So this is the problem he's got. For me, he's working with his hands tied behind his back to some extent. If you don't have the options open to you to change a game, it's very, very difficult. And, he's waved the magic wand so far this season in terms of being able to find the consistency throughout the team in terms of a defensive structure, and also, providing us with, good attacking football. But in general, it's very, very hard for him to change a game where he doesn't have the options on the bench to change it. You have to have a like-for-like striker to change a game, or a game changer on the bench to try and win or change the game, but we just don't seem to have that at the moment.
We saw it once, didn't we, Sunderland this year, when we were going nowhere for 60, 70 minutes, and he brought Townsend on and had Townsend directly running at a fullback. And all right, we've been critical of Townsend's gameplay and things like that, but there's a player that if you're going nowhere for 70 minutes and it's not working, you think, well, at least he might bring something different. And he did at the day at Sunderland. All right, he wasn't necessarily involved with the goal, but we suddenly created a few chances towards the end of that game and looked like we might go on and win it. And, Townsend plays for the under-21s in midweek, but again, just disappeared from the squad yesterday, didn't he? And that's a disappointment. There's a player that might, he won't guarantee you it will do something, but we let a Lennon go, and it appears that we're prepared to let a Townsend go, where that is a player that might just do something occasionally that would turn a draw into a win.
He's a player, isn't he, that at the moment really divides the Spurs fans. Looking across the social media, throughout the week, anytime the name Townsend's mentioned, you get a raft of supporters who say, no, we're better off without him. Then you get the ones that say, no, but, he's got the pace. He could offer something a little bit different. As you say, they've got rid of Lennon. At the moment, he really divides fans. Pochettino's dealt with it in the way that he's dealt with it. We don't know completely, of course, what's gone on behind the scenes. It is frustrating to see him there playing for the under-21s when he could offer something a little bit different in terms of...
It was good. It was good for his attitude that he by all accounts, he was the one that said, look, I need some game time, let me go and play for the under-21s. But I thought in the press conference for that West Brom game where Pochettino talked about him, it was interesting to see that he said he has a big future in the game here or at another club. And you kind of felt, well, there you go, there's the message that is available for sale. And in which case, along with Lennon, we've let perhaps the two most naturally wide players we've let them both go.
It is certainly interesting. When you look at Clinton and G and Son, as I say, very, very early days, so it's massively unfair of me to judge them, I guess, in this way. Having said that, I'm going to. You kind of wonder, don't you, if it's a choice between bringing Ng off the bench or a Townsend and Lennon off the bench. Have we maybe let the wrong one go? Having said that, you look at any manager throughout the league, as has been mentioned constantly, and even Sir Alex Ferguson, some of the stinkers that he bought, is unbelievable. So it's slightly unfair to judge, but I completely agree with your point there. I think they could maybe offer something a little bit different, and time will tell. I guess time will tell, and who knows? Let's hope NG and Son go on to become legends. But
I think the only thing, Andy, sorry to jump in.
Go for it, mate.
If you take sentiment out of the equation, Aaron Lennon has not been good enough for the past 5 seasons he was at Tottenham. He just hasn't. I know. Now we haven't got someone who runs directly at fullbacks. That's just clearly not the way Pochettino wants to play. So I don't think we're missing a player like that personally. And the fact that he ain't exactly tearing it up for Everton, is he? I don't think he's made many starts. And Everton's aspirations, you'd have thought, would be, they want top 8. Maybe our aspirations are top 4. If you can't get in a team who's not hoping to push up as high up the league as we are, then I don't think Pochettino's wrong, to tell you the truth. I think he thrived under Harry Redknapp because it was a 4-4-2, used the pace down the wings. But we haven't played that way for a while now. So I think with Townsend, I think the jury's still out. I like him personally. I agree with what Jason said. The game at Sunderland especially, we mentioned on the pod after that game, Van Arnholt, he was playing directly against that day. He went down with cramp. That was Townsend just came on to finish him off, really. But the 21s game last week, I don't know if anyone saw it, but he made a really good run down the right. He beat his fullback, pulled the ball back, and for Anton Walks to score the winner against Middlesbrough. And he had a really lively game, Townsend. So I think a lot of it's down to his attitude. I know he let himself down a bit with the spat on the pitch at White Lane. Was it after the Villa game? I think with the fitness coach. But I think he's one of them players who he gets a bit wound up, but that's because he loves the club. I don't mind that at all. I'd rather players care too much and not care enough.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they're not on the Costa side of throwing their bib over the manager. Agree completely, mate.
Well, things like that have happened before. Remember Hossam Ghali throwing his shirt at Martin Yole? He never played for Tottenham again.
Yeah, Mido, Hossam Ghali. Yeah.
But Mourinho ain't got he's not got the testicular fortitude, I'll call it, to do anything about it, has he? Because he needs Costa at the moment because they're banging trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. What a mess.
I am loving it.
Are they? Are Chelsea in trouble? I hadn't noticed.
2 points out of the relegation zone.
I saw them play AC Milan at the week. Oh no, it was Bournemouth. Well, it was the same kit as AC Milan.
I just think it's very decent of Chelsea to swap places with Leicester for a season, and maybe they call Claudio Ranieri the Tinker Man. It's not just the players he changes; he's changed 2 clubs, and no one's noticed.
Yeah, you got the better end of the bargain, didn't he? I think this season. I know where I'd rather be. That's for sure.
With that, I love it. I hate them so much.
Long may it last. That's what I'd say. It's lovely to see. I mean, lads, just coming back to Spurs. Obviously, the style of football and has been mentioned. Do you think, Ricky? Do you think that the one thing that I'm just listening to the guy speaking there, the one thing that I could think of that we lack in terms of the way we play is maybe pace behind the striker. In fact, even the striker. I mean, Harry Kane, God bless him, he's not the quickest player in the world, is he? Do you think that could be a major asset looking at future transfer windows, bringing in someone with pace that can really, terrorise defenders? I'm just thinking of different options, different ways of playing that we could maybe start to break down some of these defences. When you look at the 5 up top that we've got, you've got Harry Kane, you've got your Lamellas, Chadley when he's in there. None of them are quick players, are they? Do you think that might be something that we maybe look at in the future?
Hopefully, Andy, yeah, I do agree with you. I think the issue we've got is the players we've got are all technically quite gifted. Lamella's not the quickest, Chad is not the quickest, Eriksen's not the quickest, and Kane, by all means, hasn't got bundles of pace. And what he can do is bring other players into the game. I hope that's an area we are going to look at, because I keep going back to him all the time, but Berahino would be, for me, the perfect solution to bring in, because he does offer pace. He can play in a 2. He can play himself as a lone striker. And I think, obviously, the signing of NG, whilst he's got plenty of pace, I think many can see he's quite raw in terms of, you can see he's not up to Premier League level yet. And he's only going to get that through games. So for him, he's going to be learning on the job. Fingers crossed, like you just alluded to with the pace, we go in January and try to bring in a striker with pace to take it off Kane, because you can't ask one player to continually keep bailing you out, because Kane does offer more than just goals. He brings players into play. And then, like I say, there are going to be times when he does have an off game. And it's so hard to criticise a player, because he's not going to play 38 games all fantastically well, bring everyone into play. He is going to have off days, but that's where you have the options on the bench to be able to change the game. And at the moment, we don't have that. So fingers crossed, he does go in January and buy an alternative option with pace to take the heat off Kane.
Yeah, let's hope so. We wait and see. Listen, lads, moving on to the week ahead. Of course, busy week ahead again, coming up to Christmas, and the European games still coming. Still got the Europa League coming towards its climax of the group stage, of course, on Thursday night, Monaco at home. Jason, would you expect to see, bearing in mind we've already qualified, would you expect to see many changes?
Well, it certainly looks like the two fullbacks changed, don't they, for the Europa game? So that would look like it will happen. Whether he does take the option to bring Wimmer in and give him a game because we've qualified, and maybe he certainly needs to give Kane a break. So for me, maybe you do go with NG up front and give the boy 90 minutes in a game that won't have Premier League pace and hustle and bustle to it. And I'd like to see Townsend have a proper 90-minute run and see what he can do.
I mean, as I say, we've already qualified now, so that's done and dusted. Nice to be able to maybe rest some players before the game on Sunday. John, in terms of the forward line, would you also give Harry Kane a rest maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't have him in the 18, to be honest. I think Son needs to play 90 minutes and get him back up to speed. NG obviously would have played against Monaco before, so he should know sort of what to expect in terms of how they play. So I would definitely put both of them in the starting 11. I'd definitely rest Kane. I think Dele Alli would probably get a rest for me as well, and probably one or maybe both of the centre-backs as well. I'd maybe play Vorm. I know we're running the risk of getting a really tough last 32 draw like we did last season, but I think Monaco at home, we should be all right, even with a second 11. But one thing I do want to say, I know we've moved on, just want to move back quickly. I think that I've just come up with an idea. I think maybe the way we play now is because of a direct consequence of we're victims of our own success in as much as teams play really deep against us nowadays. So what's the point in having pace down the wings if there's no room? I think what we've got now is we've got a front 4 or 5 of players who can score from anywhere within 25 yards of the goal. And we didn't really have that before. Bale was the only one, and I know he'd done it a fair few times, which bailed us out, excuse the pun, quite often. I think nowadays we're playing a different style of football whereby it's not full neck, breakneck speed, because there ain't any room to play that way anymore. And I think a lot of teams, like you saw West Brom yesterday, they to all intents and purposes, they had 3 centre backs on the pitch plus the 2 full backs. And I think, and that's when we're playing away. You expect teams to set up like that at White Hart Lane when they come to us, but now they're doing it on their home ground as well against us. I think it just becomes more of we need a bit more intelligence and a bit more craft. And one thing that Townsend will do is he will try his luck from outside the box, and I think we need a couple of our players who play behind Kane to do that maybe a little bit more often when there's nothing on. But yeah, right, I'm jumping back now. Monaco. I'd give Vorm a run out as well. The fullbacks will change over, I'd imagine. Maybe Bentaleb might be somewhere near the squad. I don't know, but yeah, all wholesale changes for me, I think.
Yeah, Bentaleb. There's a name I'd completely forgotten about. He's been out that long, hasn't he? He's due back soon. I think Chadley was mentioned. He's due back pretty soon as well. So be a nice.
It's such a shame, Bentaleb. He's such a good. I really love him. I think he's such a good footballer. I think the sooner he comes back, the better, really, just to give us that other option. He could be one of them players that, in the youth sides, he wasn't a defensive midfielder. He was more of a box-to-box player, kind of like what Ali's doing now. And he will track back, but he'll also get forward and knock in a goal or two. And I just think Bentaleb and Dyer could be the way forward, personally. And I know you've got to fit Dembele in there and Dele Alli in there and Eriksen and everyone else, but that will give Pochettino this mythical plan B from the bench.
Yeah, it's a great shout. I mean, it hasn't really been mentioned, but we have had a few injuries, haven't we? In terms of Bentaleb and Chadley that are out. I guess the only thing about having those players come back is that it will push the likes of Harry Winks and Oma further down the pecking order. But then I guess those guys have got their time to come in future years. So,
Yeah, without a doubt. I think they're so much younger. I mean, Onoma's only, 18? I think Winks is 19.
Yeah.
I've not really seen much of Winks, to be fair. He's had the odd 5-minute cameo. But I think Onoma's going to be a player. And another player that I'm really gutted for is Alex Pritchard, because in the summer, I really thought he'd be the next one. and it hasn't worked out for him. He's got quite a bad injury and he's been out for a while. But I'm really looking forward to getting him back and seeing what he's made of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be nice to get him back. He's one that you mentioned there is highly rated. You know, people raving about him that have seen him play in the youth side. So it'd be fantastic to have.
And let's not forget Nathan Ottawa as well, who's doing all right up at Rangers.
Oh,
I know he's only scored one so far, but he's a silky player. I like the look of him.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of vines of Ottawa and absolutely brilliant. I think they're raving about him up there, aren't they? You know, so it'd be lovely.
Well, I've only seen him play once. That was in Ledley King's testimonial when he completely mugged off Paul Robinson, put him on his arse and scooped the ball over him and scored a lovely goal. But he's another one. I think we're so lucky at the moment. I think I can't remember a conveyor belt of talent that we've got. It's just amazing. What maybe it's trust from the manager as well. Maybe them kind of players have always been there. There's been a few that I think have slipped through the net recently, but. You know, players like Massimo Luongo, I think I always tipped him for a big future in the game, and there was a couple of others. But I think maybe now we've got a manager that trusts them, and I don't think Pochettino fears for his job, which is another key thing. I think previous managers would play the tried and trusted because if they didn't, it'd put more pressure on themselves. But Poch is definitely very brave in that respect.
Lads, let's look forward to Sunday against Newcastle at the Lane. Now, previous to today, we would all been sitting here saying what a great time it is to face Newcastle. Today's result, it's Sunday we're recording this, today's result might have changed that slightly. Jace, are we now going to face a different Newcastle side on Sunday?
I don't think we will do. I think there's despite today's result, I think when you look at them week in, week out, there's a lot of problems with Newcastle. I mean, they were awful at Bournemouth and yet actually won their last away game? Bournemouth away. I think it wasn't it, a couple of weeks ago when they went to Bournemouth. But no, and despite the fact we've had some hiccups to them at home, I actually feel that we'll be quite comfortable against Newcastle. There's not a lot in that side, and I think there's a lot of them that are just going through the motions as well. I think they're a side that once you get on top of Newcastle, then you stay on top of them. I don't see there's much fighting quality in their side at all.
Let's hope it stays that way, eh? And I agree. I think Sunday's a result we could and should be winning. John, is it crucial to our top four chances winning on Sunday?
Yeah, we do. Without a doubt, we need 3 points. We keep saying about this unbeaten run, and as much as I don't like to admit, Jason's spot on, I'm afraid. 8 draws and only 6 wins. 6 wins in 15 when you look at it like that. We do need to win, and I think the first goal's absolutely crucial on Sunday because if we give them something to hold on to, we might find it difficult. But if we score first and we score early or early-ish, I think we could be looking at another 4, 5. It could be anything, really. I'm hoping that... I think Steve McLaren's a pretty naive manager. I don't rate him at all. And I think hopefully they'll turn up with a bit of confidence and actually try and play. And it'll make it easier for us to pick them off. So I'm expecting a comfortable home win.
Let's hope you're right, mate. I've got to say, I agree with you completely on Steve McLaren. He must have felt the luckiest man on earth to have got that job at Newcastle. I know he did well in Belgium, but with all due respect to Belgian football, it's not the Premier League, is it? And I mean, he's not been a success anywhere he's been. You could argue maybe he had a good run with Middlesbrough in the UEFA Cup.
No.
But I mean, how he got that job is and you can imagine being a Newcastle fan, seeing Steve McLaren come to your club when you're already struggling. Crikey. It makes you feel for him almost.
I think, no trophies in, 40 years?
Yeah.
41 years? Right, they should be used to it by now, surely. They're not, come on, don't be putting the words Newcastle and big club in the same sentence. Do me a favour.
Well, I was going to say, I almost started feeling sorry for them, almost. Not quite.
Sorry, the only thing that surprises me about McLaren is when he went to Holland, and in his first interview, he was talking, he was sounding a bit like the gold member from Austin Powell. That was an awful impression. Anyway, I'm surprised he ain't gone like full Ant and Deck yet in one of his press conferences, but it will happen one day.
Yeah, the Vine's on its way. I mean, ridiculous, wasn't it? Ridiculous. Just watching that, I saw it was on telly the other day, a couple of days ago. They played that back on one of the own goals and gaffs programs, I think it was, and just farcical. Ricky, mate, Sunday, Newcastle should be a stroll in the park, you would think, based on their recent struggles. And Jason's already mentioned there's no one really in their side that would necessarily worry you at the moment. Confidence is down, but is sometimes that the most dangerous team that you can play?
Yeah, sometimes, Andy, and providing Dr. Spurs isn't in town, it should be a comfortable 3 points. I think a lot of it to do about White Hart Lane is how we start the game. You saw the game against West Ham. We got the goal nice and early, settled the crowd down, and went on to stroll the game 4-1. So I think a lot of it is to do with how we start the game, providing that we start bright, early, get amongst them, press them. And if we can get that early goal, I just feel like White Hart Lane, that does settle the crowd. For the first time in quite a long season, at White Hart Lane, what are we now? We're now in December. We're still unbeaten at the Lane in terms of the Premier League. So that's a great thing to be proud of. I think we're only the second team still to be unbeaten at home. So we want to keep that going. We want the Lane to become a fortress. I do think Newcastle will come and try and play for the point, even though they're in the position they're in. A lot of teams are coming to the Lane, as we saw with Chelsea, and they respect Spurs and try and put 11 men behind the ball. And what we've got to do, the same as we found against West Brom, is find a way to break them down. So if we can get that early goal, I do see, like the lads have said, that we can go on to win this game 3-4-0. But it very much is dependent on how we start the game.
Yeah, can we crack that? Can we crack that nut? And it's sort of game I would think, because you can imagine there's going to be space in there at times. I would think there'd still be space in the midfield, although Newcastle are going to not want to lose. I can imagine Dele Alli really reveling in this type of game. I think pretty much reveling in any type of game at the moment, but I can imagine him having a good game. Tell you what, lads, we haven't done this for a few weeks. Let's go across the board and get some predictions for Sunday. Ricky, first of all.
So I'm going to go 3-1 Spurs.
Nice 3-1. John?
6-1.
6. You do realise this is going to be played back on next week's show.
When we win 8-0, it looks so silly, will I? We've had a couple of 4-1s, a 5-1. I just think and we really do owe Newcastle one at White Hart Lane as well. Like the last couple of years, they've robbed us. So I think, I don't know. I just think in front of our own crowd, and the fact that we do owe the home fans a performance. I think we've had too many draws at home. I just think we'll be all right. I really do. I think it'll be a comfortable one. Maybe all right. Maybe not 6. But, no, sorry, 6-1. 6.
He's bottled it now.
6-1. No, 6-1. No, 7-1.
7-1. You heard it here first. And go down there, put a bet on that one. Jace.
I'll go 3-0.
3-0. It's interesting.
3-0 or 1-1.
Or 1-1.
No, I'll go 3-0.
Covering all bases there, mate. It's interesting. You're the only one that mentioned us keeping a clean sheet. Is that a sign maybe that that Saturday's game we weren't as secure as we have been?
No, I don't think Newcastle got anything to hurt us with. If we're on our game, I think we'll end up dominating the ball and having chances. And like I say, I think with Newcastle, if you get on top of them, I think there's no real fight in the side. A little bit similar to the Aston Villa type of game, although they did nick a deflected goal, having shown absolutely nothing in the game. So I think we're quite comfortable. Mitrovic probably will get himself sent off or do something completely stupid, and then they'll be down to 10 men as well.
It's going to be, I think, an interesting afternoon for both teams. I think a result either way could be quite telling for both sides. So let's hope it goes our way and we get that win on Sunday. And as John mentioned there, we owe Newcastle a couple. So let's hope one of those come on Sunday. Listen, lads, it's been a pleasure as always. Don't forget, guys, listening out there, you can, of course, follow us on Twitter at @e_Spurs, on Facebook, e-Spurs page, or if you want to drop us an email, it's e-spurs@live.co.uk, and have your say about this week's show, and we'll read out some of those responses on the show next week. And of course, you can follow the guys that you've heard tonight on Twitter. All of their Twitter accounts are published over the e-Spurs Twitter account when this show goes live. So get in touch with the guys out there and have your say. We'll be back next week after the Newcastle game. Let's hope there's 3 points and a Europa League triumph to talk about on next week's show. Other than that, guys, have a great week. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.